Hi, we're Richard and Jackie, and we're Early Retirement Wanderlust.
So last week we talked to you about why we thought it was a good idea to buy a VW Campervan, and welcome back to part two, where we're going to talk about some of the things that we chose specifically when we had our campervan converted.
We've had our campervan for over 5 years now, and we've stayed in it nearly.
600 nights.
And during that time, we found out what we really like about the campervan and what we don't like about the campervan. We had it converted as complete and utter novices, and some things work for us and some things don't work.
No, most things work for us.
So all we want to do is try and take you through and give you an insight into some of the things that we've included in our campervan and some of the things that you might want to consider if you're converting a van or buying a van for the first time.
The biggest part of the conversion, and probably the most expensive part of the conversion, was having the pop-top roof put on, but we have found it invaluable. We don't sleep in it. We can sleep in it if we wanted to, but we do find it's really, really hot up there in the summer and really cold in the winter, and there are only two of us, so we do use our very comfortable rock and roll bed. A big advantage of the pop-top roof is that it gives us a lot more extra headspace when we're actually in the van, just day-to-day living. We use it mainly for storage. It's fantastic, particularly if we're on a big trip and we've got the canoe and we've got all sorts of different hiking rucksacks. We just put the roof up and shove them all into a board at the back of the roof. Okay, so the next big expense when we converted the van was having a rock and roll bed fitted. We sleep in this all of the time. Like I said, we don't particularly like it up in the pop-top roof. And again, really simple to get out. Top tip before I open it up, we have all our bedding wrapped up in a duvet mattress. The duvet mattress is great. It's about 3 inches thick. It makes the bed much more comfortable. So, here we go. That's it, my bed's made.
One of the advantages of converting your own van is that you get the opportunity to configure it exactly how you want. Windows might not sound the most interesting topic at all when you're thinking about a camper van, but it is quite a key issue. We started with a base van that was a combi van purposely because it had factory fitted windows. One of the issues of not having factory fitted windows is apparently there can be all sorts of leak problems and things like that, whereas factory fitted are generally a little bit more reliable. We decided when we converted our van not to go for a second set of rear windows. They are really popular and they do come as standard on the VW California, but for us we felt it would be just more space to have to insulate, and the fact that we wanted to use the van 12 months of the year in the winter, we just felt it would lose too much heat by an extra set of glass. Another consideration to do with windows is actually blacking them out on a night, because you do want a little bit of privacy, but also you want a little bit of warmth. We decided not to go for curtains, which would have been the cheaper option. There was a new product out about 5 years ago called Vanshades. These have been probably one of the best investments I think that we made in our van conversion, because they work really simply. They just shutter down and it completely blacks out the van. They are thermal lined, they keep us toasty warm even when we've been out skiing in the van, and they just make it really snug on a night.
Another decision we had to make was, do we go for a barn door or a tailgate? The tailgate was on my wish list because I thought in an ideal world that we'd be able to sit underneath it. It would give us a bit of shelter from the rain and the wind. We don't actually do any of that, but it is really good for having the bike rack on it. It's a very stable bike rack, and the tailgate is lovely to open it up. And I can lie in bed, and if we've got a nice sea view that way, I can just lie in bed and watch the sea view.
One of the hardest things we found to get our heads round when buying a camper van and using a camper van for the first time was the electrical systems. Now, to keep it clear in your mind, try and separate off the van from the camper van. The van has its own battery, and that is to fire up the engine and do whatever it does. I won't even pretend to understand what that does. And then the camper van is a bit like your house, and it has its own electrical system. It runs off 12-volt leisure batteries, so it is quite limited. Now, the way we monitor our 12-volt supply is through this really simple control panel. It's all fused up. I won't pretend to understand one iota of how the system works, but we had it professionally done, and it works really efficiently. The way we charge the battery is twofold. Firstly, when we're driving, we've got a battery to battery charger that's tucked away under here that takes energy from the engine that's moving. We also have a solar panel up top, and it's completely revolutionized our energy systems. We've never run out of battery supply. The solar always keeps it topped up, even in winter to some extent, and we've always got enough energy to keep us going. Another upgrade that we added to the van was when we were in Croatia, we were electrically hooked up to the mains, and yet we weren't getting any benefit from that. So we've added a mains charger so that anytime we hook up the van to mains electricity, it also charges the batteries at the same time.
Being on the road for weeks at a time, we definitely needed a way of charging our iPad and our phones, so we've had plenty of USB sockets put into the van. We've also had some 3-pin plugs put in so that when we're on electric hookup we can charge our laptops and our camera battery, because we do a lot of photography as well.
Within a camper van, as well as electricity, you also need a gas supply. You need a gas supply to cook, and you also need something to keep you warm in the colder months if you're wanting to use your camper van year round, which we do. There is a very, very simple option of getting a propane bottle stored somewhere within the van, but they are small vans, and we know that space is a premium. So one of the decisions we made was to get a refillable LPG tank that sits underneath the van. That way it works out really cheap in terms of we can fill up at any petrol station. It costs no more than about £5 to fill the tank, and the tank can run and run and run, and at times we've run it for over 6 months and still don't use up that gas supply.
For such a small item in the van, this fridge cost us a fortune, but it is definitely worth it. One of the problems that we do find is that it whips through the power in our leisure battery. Having solar power has sorted that problem to a certain extent. Another issue that we found is that when we were hooked up to campsite electricity, that it still didn't run the fridge for some particular reason. So we did have to spend another £100 having something in the cupboard converted so that the fridge would actually run off campsite hookups.
We made a conscious decision that when we bought our camper van, we wanted to use it year round. So it was absolutely essential that we had some sort of heating system within the van. Because we paid and invested in getting an LPG underslung tank, we asked our installer to put in a Propex LPG heater. It works really simply. It needs a little bit of battery supply to fire it up, but all we have to do in order to switch it on is make sure that our gas supply is switched on there, turn the heater up, and within about 10 seconds it actually ignites and we get a hot air feed coming through from under there. One of the things that we think that we possibly got wrong in our initial design, and we don't have quite an answer for it yet, is internal lighting in a camper van. We definitely, when we were designing the van, went for more is better, and that's the wrong option. We're absolutely amazed at how little lighting you can get away in the van. So for instance, we've got at least 6 LED lights inside this cab, and we've got 2 LED lights under the tailgate, and when all of those are running, you could actually land an aeroplane in here because it's like a landing strip and it's just way too bright. It uses loads of power when all the lights are on, and we just don't need it. So quite often we just rely on our reading lights, which was something that we specifically asked for the installer to put in, and they are just brilliant. So we've got a reading light over the bed and we've got a reading light over the cab. One of the amendments we quickly made, rather than having all the lights on one switch, was to make sure that we isolated these 2 lights above the cooker, which give us really nice ambient lighting. It consumes so much less energy and it's a much nicer environment to sit in. So like most camper vans, our little mini kitchen is a Dometic hob and sink. Not quite sure about the sink, to be fair. it's something that every campervan seemingly has installed, and I'm not sure how many people actually use them. We certainly don't use our sink at all. We do all our washing up in a bowl, or we do it on a campsite. One of the most popular ways by far of keeping your water supply on board is in jerry cans, and it actually takes up a huge amount of space within these cupboards. We decided that we hadn't got the space for that, and so had underslung water tanks beneath the van, and they just pipe straight up into the tap. They are really, really good, but in winter they're obviously exposed to the elements, so we tend not to use that and use bottled water within the van. But we felt the payoff. We couldn't write off this amount of covered space just to hold jerry cans of water. One of the things to do with the water system that we were unaware of was our converter put a water heater in. We've never used it, we never intend to use it, and it was an utter waste of money.
I'm pretty sure we've not covered everything, but there's only 2 more things we wanted to talk about. We decided to go for a 3/4 size rock and roll bed because we wanted a kitchen inside the van. It was important to us because we wanted to be able to cook inside during the winter months. We do have friends that wanted a bigger bed and a more comfortable van to sleep in, and they have got a pod that goes out of the back of the van. Not so practical in winter, but they don't go out in the winter, so they find that really great.
And thinking about our summer use, we haven't got a pop-up awning or anything sophisticated like that. We decided not to go for a fixed awning on the side of the van because in reality we don't actually use an awning that much. We have gone for a relatively cheap fly sheet awning as an added extra, but we'll show you that in our next video. And in our next video, we are going to move on from the nuts and bolts of the van and everything that is incorporated into the van to all the added extras and the seemingly endless list of accessories that you can buy to just enhance that campervan experience.
So we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.